boom, 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 boom. You know what? I will never be a part of any kind of cool beatbox community because I'm not a beatboxer, but I'm really excited to introduce my friend today who's moved from Chicago to Colorado and specifically to Denver. I'm very intrigued by the whole thing because I've never really asked her questions about it. She actually has an amazing website called Chicago's Cheap Ass, which I think is hilarious, that I have used when I've gone to Chicago. And so given that she's so geeked out about Chicago, I was like, why would you move to Colorado? I would love to introduce my friend, Maddy Osman, Chicago Cheap Ass, as a couple other projects that we'll talk about, and welcome her to the state of Colorado. She's still a pretty new resident. I'm hoping she's having fun so far. So hi, Maddy. How are you?
Hey, Michelle. Thanks for the wonderful introduction.
Why in the hell did you move to Colorado? Like, what's the deal?
The official answer is my boyfriend's job changed, and he's working for the same company and just in a different role, moving into more business development stuff. And so the West Coast is now his territory. And, you know, he brought it up to me many, many months ago and was like, hey, this is an opportunity we could take if we wanted to. And I have traveled to the West Coast before, but, you know, coming from Chicago, it's a little bit more annoying to get to, different time zone, you know, definitely not as easy as anything Midwest or East Coast. And I just thought to myself, you know, my business is very flexible. I can pretty much do it anywhere. Moving wouldn't necessarily mean a loss of clients. And it also just is kind of an adventure, you know, on one hand, trying something new, living somewhere else with different people, expanding our worldview. And then on the other hand, he's going to be traveling a lot, and I'm hoping to accompany him on at least some of those trips. So just trying to get to know another part of the United States, basically.
So had you visited Colorado before moving here? What was your experience with Colorado prior to this?
So I had come to Colorado about a year before we moved, and that was my first time here, and I was working for a charity organization as a volunteer, but they had their training in Estes Park. So
nice.
it was awesome. I flew in through Denver, but didn't really get to see the city. It was really mostly in Estes Park. So, you know, I kind of had just that view of Colorado prior to moving. I liked what I saw, definitely, you know, I had to adjust to the elevation a little bit, but it wasn't too difficult. And from there, about, I would say 2 months before moving here, I came back so that I could scope out the situation as far as apartments, you know, try to get to know the area a little bit better before moving. But I think an important piece that I forgot to mention is we kind of had our choice of different West Coast areas to live, different major cities, just because his office had locations in all those places and he could have worked out of there or remotely at home. But Denver really just stuck out to me as something that was very similar in some ways to Chicago in terms of, you know, the attitude of the residents, just, you know, things in terms of like, you know, restaurant life, bar life. Those are all things that I kind of obsessed about on that Chicago Cheap Ass blog. A lot of friends have moved here. A lot of people always talk it up as a great place to come. So there were just a lot of things that drew us here, besides the fact that my boyfriend Dan is also a snowboarder and craft beer enthusiast. So Denver to me always seemed like the one that we would go to. I didn't really consider any other West Coast cities.
What has been your experience so far? And I really am trying to get, so I haven't had a lot of like negative stuff. And I'm like, God, you know, there's got to be some downsides. So have there been some things where you're like, what the hell is this? Or are there some downsides to the move so far?
I guess two things immediately come to mind. The first one is Denver has I don't know if it's a bigger homeless population than Chicago, but it's a more obvious and kind of like in-your-face homeless population. And I will say that, like, walking down the street, I don't get heckled. It's a lot different of an attitude, I think, that the homeless people here have versus Chicago. So it's one of those things that I'm, like, a little bit uncomfortable with, but I don't necessarily feel unsafe, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, you know, moving to Colorado, you always think about, like, oh, like, gorgeous outdoors, mountains, etc. And there is that, but I feel like in Denver specifically, because so many people are moving here, and obviously I'm a part of that problem, there's a lot of construction, and it is kind of an eyesore. So if I were to have two complaints about moving here, it would probably be more or less limited to those two things. Besides that, I mean, I've been pretty happy overall with my experience so far. Oh, one more thing. The DMV, you're supposed to bring something with your Social Security card on it, and apparently your password doesn't count, and that really wasted a whole day of my life.
Oh, no. Oh. Share that one again just to make sure that people are, like prepped for that one.
Okay. So either when you're going to the DMV to get your Colorado license, which we only did it this quickly because my boyfriend wanted to buy a car here, and he didn't want to pay Cook County taxes back in Chicago, which are ridiculous. So we went like day 3 of moving here, and first of all, in Illinois, the DMV is also the same thing as the Secretary of State's office. That's not true in Denver. We found that out with personal experience. Also, you're supposed to go to the DMV that is relevant to your county that you live in. So it's another thing that people have to keep in mind. Make sure you double check before you go. And the third thing is you need to bring some sort of official documentation with your Social Security number on it. I ended up bringing a W-2 for my last official job I had. So as a freelancer, that's the thing that's a little bit more difficult to produce. So you could do that. You could do your Social Security card, but you can't use your passport. So that's really unfortunate because you actually need a lot of documentation to get that. You would think it would count, but it doesn't.
Huh. This I did not know. So see people, I needed to know this. Actually, this is a hilariously funny story. So I'm an adult who's learning to drive. I've just recently got my license, literally last week. And right. So you talking about
where you're going to be driving.
I'm actually really good. I did a lot of study and practicing, so I'm really good as a new adult driver could be. And don't worry, I drive on during off times, and I'm really, really careful. But it's so funny because I went to the DMV, and what they've done, because there used to be a lot of problems with the DMV when I was younger, and I remember this, and people were so mad. So they've kind of broken it up so that there's certain things that you do in certain offices and other things in other offices.
Exactly.
So, not every DMV, the one on Welton Street, is not where you can get your driver's license. That's more for, car tags and things like that. How do I know that? Because I actually got tags for my car from there. But then when I passed my license, and I thought it was not that busy there, but I was like, oh, driver's license guy who just did my test, can I go to any DMV to get the actual, card? And he's like, yes, you can. And then I went back to the Welton Street one, and there's a sign that's like, no, you cannot do it here. So that was kind of sad. I was like, oh, this is terrible. So then I had to go to Lakewood, which is the one that's closest to me, even though I'm in Denver, to get my actual driver's license. It only took an hour. I was sad because I had to take a new picture, and the one on my permit is so cute. And this one, I've actually gained 10 pounds, and you can see it. It was very depressing. So I'm going to have to lose that. Once I lose the weight, I'm going to have to lose the card and get a new one. But that's another conversation, Maddie.
Yeah, I was going to say it's funny because myself and my boyfriend actually put an effort into our appearance the first day that we went to the DMV and were denied our licenses. And And then we went back the exact next day, early in the morning, and didn't shower, and it shows.
Oh, I was sad. I was really upset when I saw. I emotionally ate during the election season, so literally I gained 10 pounds. So it shows, but that's another conversation. But anyway, so what have been some surprising things about your move? We've talked about some of the downsides. I would agree with you. I would also say with the homeless population, I don't think that we have more. I think that it's just a smaller city.
Right.
And that you are in downtown. You're I think you guys are living in downtown. And so
more or less, yeah.
Yeah, so where I live, I see there's one or two regular people that you see, and that's it. You're not going to see, it's the closer to the city center, the more you're going to see it, because that's where people are hanging out.
Exactly.
It's a big issue, and what I've noticed is there are people, and it's always been this way, who kind of hang out in Colorado.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's kind of the same, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the same conclusion that I've drawn.
Yeah, so it's not even so much, and they used to do it in Boulder, but Boulder has gotten really, it's hard to do it there. But so people are just hanging out. I've noticed since cannabis has been legalized that the numbers grew. They went down a little bit, I think, just in my unofficial opinion. But that the other issue is that the weather has been warmer longer than usual. So one of the things that's going to happen is the weather will turn. And people, you can't, people will move on. And so I think it's going to be an interesting year to see what happens with that. But typically people aren't, the homeless populations aren't really messing with people so much as just hanging out. And so it's visually a little jarring to people, especially when you're from cities where people will bother you.
Yep, and that's Chicago.
Yeah, so I've been to Chicago many times, and it is definitely a different interaction. I will say you still do have to be mindful because there are people with mental illness. That is one thing I would say. And one of the things that I'm looking to do is to interview people who are working with the homeless in Denver and advocating on their behalf and talking with them, because it's something that I care about deeply, that I'm concerned about, because I grew up here, and I feel like we're at a stalemate, and I think we're at a make or break point because of housing and things like that. On to something a little lighter. What has surprised you so far about your move, and surprised you in a good way?
I love how close the airport is. That's one thing. That's kind of an obvious thing. I think it's interesting, when I was looking for apartments and stuff, just all the different communities and stuff they have, and how they really try to help residents meet each other, and, referring back to that South Park episode with Soda Sopa or whatever. It's it's fun to make fun of them, but they're really nice buildings because they're so new, and, they incorporate everything that a person could really want. So different things that I have thought about since moving here into this specific apartment complex that I moved into, which we got a great deal because we moved in November, so it all works out.
Oh.
But different things that have surprised me in a good way just where I live is one, we have a really nice espresso machine that's free to use for residents. So I'll be walking my dog in the morning and just drop in for an espresso before I'm done. It's super nice. And we have a gym on site, which back in Chicago, it was a 30-minute walk. So it was just a huge part of my day to even go and use it. We have a hot tub, we have a pool, stuff you don't need, but it's kind of nice. We've already used the hot tub a couple times before the weather got a little colder. And it's just cool to have all these amenities. I lived in a vintage walk-up in Chicago, and while it was fine and while it was luckily very affordable, there were no amenities like this. And I think that that's pretty standard for a lot of apartments in Denver. You'll definitely pay for them, For the most part, these places are not cheap. They know their supply and demand very well. And in fact, I was told while we were looking at these places that they update them like every weekend and sometimes even more than that. So pricing is always changing, and you kind of have to like jump on a good thing when you find it. But, so far I've been really happy with that. Trying to think of other examples. I mean, one thing I was pleasantly surprised about, too, was just how walkable of a city Denver is. And I think it's really hilarious when people complain about traffic here because it's got nothing on Chicago traffic. Like, it's a joke.
I hate the traffic here. Oh, my God. We're so mad, but no, you're right, because Chicago traffic is, I won't be driving in Chicago.
It will test every fiber of your being, of your existence.
Have you had a chance to meet people here, and what's that been like for you?
Okay, so this is kind of hilarious, and it refers back to my DMV experiences. But,
oh, Lord.
So the second day I went to the DMV, which, nobody should ever have to go to the DMV twice in 2 days, but, it happened. We were just waiting in line, and as you well know, those lines are very long, and they take forever, and you're bored. And so myself and this girl in front of me were just talking, and we kind of just, like, hit it off and exchanged numbers. And since then, we've hung out a couple times. So it's, like, weird. It's like who expects, like, anything good to happen from a DMV visit, but it actually resulted in, like, meeting a cool friend. And we even went to her Friendsgiving a couple weeks ago. So, I think that because a lot of people here are transplants, it's really easy to make connections because everyone's kind of looking for their home away from home, people to go out and have fun with. And so far my experiences have been really positive with just chatting with people in general and just making friends.
So, listeners, I'm actually going to interview Maddy about two completely different things. But I do want her to mention this for this podcast for Square State. Talk about your business and what it's been like transitioning. It is a digital business, but still you're in a new place. So what has it been like transitioning your digital business to your life in Colorado and incorporating like a Colorado lifestyle with that business? And are you going to a co-working space? Like, what's that been like? So talk a little bit about what you actually do and then the transition and where you're working from and how that's going and response to what you're doing so far.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of people have been asking me that throughout this whole move situation. So just to kind of touch on what I do really quick, it is a couple different services. I would say the main one and the one that I want to be known for relates to the blogging side of things. So article writing, web copywriting, with an SEO focus. But I also do social media marketing, content creation, and ads management. And then I do some one-off projects with web design. But it's really blogging and social media that I'm more excited about. And so I had a really amazing Chicago network, and part of that was because I've been in sales for a while, so I went to a lot of kind of established networking events there, made a name for myself, was consistent about it. And I think it's also because I was a blogger in Chicago, so, you get connected to all the PR people, other bloggers in general who help you promote you, and you promote them in return. And, people just start to kind of recognize you when you have both this, like, networking side of things and then this sort of, like, influencer side of things. So I was really, I did have, like, an inner struggle with moving and leaving that network behind. And, luckily because my business is digital, I don't think it's going to affect me in a big way. But a lot of clients, when we first meet, if it's for a bigger project or when we first start talking, do like to have that first, meeting in person, and then they're comfortable with work being completed online after that. So I was a little bit worried about it, but so far the move and the transition with my business has been absolutely smooth sailing. And a couple things I've done to try to help myself with that move is, first of all, joining different chapters of the networking organizations that I was a member of in Chicago, now here in Denver. So like one of them is like BMA, which is the Business Marketing Association. Their members always need writers for stuff. So for me, that's like the perfect fit. There is also a chapter of Freelancers Union. They have these monthly events called Freelancers Spark or something like that, where freelancers meet up under the guise of different monthly topics. And Michelle, that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, maybe getting involved with as a speaker, but we can save that for another time. But so it's like, not only meeting clients, but I also want to meet other people more or less in the same position as me, because I feel like with freelancing, freelancers aren't your competition. Like, those are like hashtag squad goals. You want people who are going to listen to you, when you have complaints about everything that has to do with freelancing. So they act as like your coworkers, and in some cases as great referral sources for business. So those are kind of the two like major moves I've made so far, just getting involved with those organizations. I have, made small changes in like my online profiles, where now it's like targeting Denver, on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, updating my current city. And I have actually gotten some inbound leads from people in Denver, or in Colorado in general. So I think that, I have the right systems in place. I just need to definitely stay involved with those things and keep current with them. And as far as co-working spaces, I haven't really checked out too many yet, but I'm excited because I have this list of all these ones I want to check out. But another thing to mention with regards to the apartment building that I moved into is that they have this awesome conference room you can rent out. So now it's like, if somebody wants to meet in person and I don't necessarily have a place that I want to take them, like, I could definitely bring them here and feel safe about it. So those are kind of my initial thoughts on the work transition so far.
And how has it gone for your boyfriend? He can work from home as well, but he's going into the office and things like that. So how do you think he's transitioning to work life in Colorado? And has he been happy with it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely a new challenge for him because it is a new role, and he had been doing the other one for, somewhere around 4 years. So with change, and not only the change of moving somewhere new, but also taking on a completely different job, there are some growing pains. But he is the type of person who, doesn't stop till it's done, doesn't give up till, he's put in his best effort. And, the conversation has changed from this is hard to like, hey, I'm making some progress. And, part of the work-life thing is getting new coworkers. And while he does work from home probably, a couple of days a week or, between meetings and stuff, he'll stop back by. He does have some new coworkers here. And so it's like those are people that are not only resources for moving to Denver and Colorado in general and learning from their experiences, but also friends, because a lot of those people are more or less the same age as us, and also transplant. So I think that overall the experience has been really positive for him, and it kind of represents growth and change in a good way.
And my final question for this podcast, I'm definitely going to have you come back, is have you had an opportunity to enjoy the outdoors? Like, have you, I've actually met people who've moved here and they never go to the mountains. And I'm like, this is not a good fit for you. So
right.
Have you had a chance to begin exploring the outdoors? It hasn't really snowed a lot. So a lot of the ski resorts are just now opening up. So have you hit the slopes? How has that been? And has that exceeded your expectations, or has it been pretty awesome, the ability to go into nature as compared to what you would do in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, Chicago is a great city because, first of all, it's big. Second of all, we're on the waterfront.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and third of all, we I think that the residents and the government in general makes an effort to protect like any sort of outdoor nice space, but it is, you know, considerably different from the outdoors here. And one of the things that kind of stands out to me is the fact that Chicago is just like really freaking cold, you know, like you don't even want to be outside at a certain point. It kind of makes you want to cry if it gets to that, you know, ridiculous like negative 30-degree thermometer reading. Reading.
No.
So part of it is just like in Chicago, you have opportunities, but you like don't even want to take them because it's just too depressing. But yeah, I think I would agree with you on that. If somebody moves here and doesn't at least try some outdoorsy things, even if that's not their thing, like it's a total waste because it is so beautiful out here. I think I read some statistics somewhere that said that Coloradoans are like some of the most in shape people, and it makes sense because there's so many different things you could do, like regardless of what you're into. So, you know, with regards to that, we have gone hiking. We went to Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs.
Pretty.
I want to say like 2 weeks ago or something like that. It was beautiful, and you know, it wasn't like a super intense trail. It was just enough to kind of get into it. So we're hoping to kind of take it up a notch from there. Dan, my boyfriend, has dreams of mountain biking at some of these harder places, but I definitely need to build up my cardio a bit before we attempt that.
I do a lot of stuff, but mountain biking is not one of them.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna put that one on the back burner for now. But you know, Dan bought the Rocky Mountain Super Pass, and so we will definitely be using that. And I honestly have never skied or snowboarded before. But
oh God.
So I'm like terrified, but at the same time, it's like we're here. Why the hell not? Like let's just try, see what happens. If I absolutely suck at it, then I'll just go to the bar till he's done.
I so want to be there the day that you're learning.
Yeah,
I'm not joking. Like, you need to let me know.
All right, we'll do.
Okay.